Hi, I'm Cooper Hansen, and I'm here with Mr. Sean Copeland. How are you doing this morning, Sean?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great. And how was your drive here? Because it is a bit rainy.
Yeah, it was good. It was good.
Yeah, that's good to hear. And you are a radio host on 105.7. And how did your radio show go this morning?
It's a good question. I never really know because, unlike a live performing arts kind of thing, you don't get live feedback from the audience. So, and ratings aren't quite that instant. So you never really know how it goes. I joke sometimes that it's kind of like you're just throwing wet pasta against a wall and seeing what sticks. And it's funny that sometimes you will plan and choreograph a show and think about things to talk about and be really, really strategic about it. And then it just kind of falls flat. And then something that you come up with in the spur of the moment, like, really sticks and connects with people. So it's a balance between art and science.
Right, that's kind of an interesting thing to think about. And how are ratings determined in radio? Because people might not know how that is determined.
Well, they used to be, up until just a few years ago, they were done via a diary, which, just like if anybody watching keeps a diary, you just write down what you do. That was literally it. You got a notebook and you wrote down, like, from 6 to 10 a.m. I listened to this, whatever. Now it's done via something called a PPM, or a personal people meter. And it's this little apparatus about the size of an iPod Nano. And in the Indianapolis market, there are 1.5 million people who live in the market. There are 1,000 meters. And so there are 1,000 people who carry these meters around, and the meters just measure what you listen to. And we get credit for that. So it's 1,000 people roughly controlling whether I succeed or fail. That's just a sobering thought.
That is kind of scary to think about, I guess. But what is the basis of your radio show? Because maybe some people have heard your radio show, but maybe some haven't. So what is the basis of your show?
Well, so every radio station has a target demographic or a target listener, someone they're speaking to, and I'm guessing that probably a lot of high school students here at Greenfield probably have not watched or not listened to my show, because our target would be a 48-year-old female. And so the basis of my show is thinking about things that a 48-year-old female cares about. What is she thinking about? What is she worried about? What makes her laugh? And so it's a mix of music that she wants to hear, and then hopefully things that she wants to hear me talk about. My philosophy is to be the moon and not the sun. So in other words, the sun just beams light out, right? But the moon reflects light back. So I just try to reflect back whatever I think my audience is already thinking about.
Yeah, and you talked about you do certain, you play music that someone would like. What kind of music do you play on 105.7?
So the technical term for it is adult contemporary, or soft rock. It's 80s, 90s now, all songs that, well, you may not be able to sing along with, but your mom probably could.
Yeah, definitely. I know my mom does listen to your radio show every now and then.
Good.
But what is your favorite segment to do on your radio station, or your radio show, rather?
So there are two kinds of radio shows, I think. There is a bit-driven show and a visit-driven show. A bit-driven show is like, hey, we're here to entertain you with these wacky games and whatever else. And there's a visit-driven show, which is where I'm just hanging out talking to you about things that are happening in my life and things that are happening in your life. And those are my favorite segments, where I can share about something that I've experienced in my life, and that there's an intersection between my life and the listener's life.
Yeah, and how did you actually first get interested in radio? Because it seems like you've done very successful. So how did you first get into it? How did you know this is what I want to do?
Well, so I'm an only child, and so I was raised by a single mom who worked a lot, and so I was home alone a lot, and I spent a lot of time with the radio, and it seemed like such an intimate medium that these people through this box are somehow talking directly to you, and it was really cool for me. And I thought, if I could ever be that companion or that just warm, friendly voice for somebody, then I would love to do that. When I was in high school, my Sunday school teacher owned the only radio station in our entire county, so I begged him for a job.
And how did you actually get your job at the first station? Because you said that you had a friend that actually was at a radio station, the only radio station. And so how did you get that job in the first place? How did that situation?
It was my Sunday school teacher owned the radio station, so I was friends with his kids, and I was like, I want to work for your dad. What do I do? And I was 15 years old, and they said, well, you need to put together a demo tape. I'm like, I don't know what that is. So they said, well, you need to have a recording of yourself doing something. So I had a little handheld tape recorder, and I went in my bedroom and I recorded myself reading something that I'd written out of my high school newspaper. My high school didn't have a radio TV department. And so I turned that in with some resume that I completely made up because I'd never done anything. And I took that into the radio station. About 4 months later, he called and offered me a job, and I worked there the last 2 years of high school. I read news and obituaries before. We read obituaries on the air. That was exciting. Before and after school. And he told me as I was going away to college and quitting that job, he's like, I don't think I ever told you the story of how or why I hired you. He said that when I turned in the resume and the tape, that he kind of intentionally forgot about it because he didn't want to reject his son's friend and it'd be awkward. So he just decided to avoid it. And he and his wife were on a road trip. And I don't remember if it was a deer or something, but something jumped out in front of their van and they slammed on the brakes. And this cassette tape, this shows you how long ago it was a cassette tape. This cassette tape comes sliding out from underneath the van seat, and all the labeling was worn off. And his wife picked it up and put it in the tape deck, and it was me, it was my demo tape. And he said, I remember my wife looking at me and saying, if you don't hire him, there's something wrong with you. And he's like, so since my wife said so, I called you the next day.
Oh, that sounds pretty cool.
I owe it all to that deer, or whatever it was that jumped in front of their van.
That's kind of a funny story about how you got that job, and I really haven't used a cassette player ever in my life, which is also crazy to think about. Yeah. But what are some tips that you could give to someone looking for a career in radio and television, or just like the media area in general nowadays?
Make as many connections as you possibly can. You should be reaching out to people at your local radio stations and your local TV stations right now, asking them for job shadowing opportunities, internships, if they even would accept. Some will even let you volunteer at promotional events, but make as many connections and build as many relationships as you can, because when they have a stack of demo tapes and they have a stack of resumes, if your name comes across, they're like, oh, I know him, I remember him, I've emailed with him, and that's going to make a difference.
Yeah, and how did you actually get your job at 105.7? Because you told me how you got your first job in radio. How about your current job?
Yep, well, I moved to Indianapolis for a different job. And when I realized that one was not going to be a long-term solution for me, I did exactly what I just told you to do. I started reaching out to other people in the local media community, saying like, hey, whenever you have any openings, keep me in mind. And so when an opening came, they already knew me. I was already familiar to them on some level.
Mm-hmm. And what has been the most memorable moment on your radio show you can think of off the top of your head?
Oh gosh. Well, probably wouldn't be on the show that I do now, but one of the most memorable things that I ever did was a show that I worked on in college. We brought together there was a couple that had given up a baby for adoption. And this baby was now, I think, 20 or 21 years old. And we reunited the parents and their son, and they saw each other, so they hadn't seen their child since he was a newborn, and they saw him and embraced and met and hugged and had this wonderful exchange live on our radio show, and it was incredibly powerful for to witness something that I don't know, that vulnerable. It was
sentimental.
Cool. Yeah, sentimental. Exactly. Good.
Yeah, and how did you get this to happen? Like, how did you even get those two to meet up?
I think it was a nationally syndicated show, so we were on it about, 10, 15 states, and it seems to me that we were doing some kind of promotion where we were just inviting people to tell us stories if they had any long-lost loves or long-lost family members, and as people would tell their stories, we tried to do research and figure out if we could actually make connections for them, and this was one that was successful.
Well, that's great, and I would actually like to thank you for coming out for this interview. Definitely a bit of a drive from your morning show, so I do thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Hi, I'm Max Faber, and I'm here with the Fire Chief, Jim Roberts. How are you doing today?
Fine, how are you?
Good, how are you? So to start us off here, how long have you been a firefighter?
I'm a firefighter in all 30 years now.
30 years?
30 years. I've been with the Greenfield Fire Department for almost 23 years now.
That's quite impressive. What made you want to become a firefighter?
Well, originally in life, my father was a volunteer firefighter and a police officer. I originally thought I wanted to be a police officer when I went to college for that, and then in turn changed my mind and decided I wanted to be a firefighter. So I was always into public safety, and I knew where I wanted to go.
Yeah. What has inspired you to be a firefighter for so long?
the love of the job. Being there for people and seeing them make a difference is what really is inspirational in the job.
What's the hardest part about being a firefighter?
The hardest part is probably the runs that don't quite go right as they should. When we go out, the ones that really hit the firefighters most is runs with infants or babies or whatever is what really is the hardest part. And then of course, just like today, the heat's no fun to when you're a firefighter.
Yeah. So, what are your specific responsibilities as the fire chief?
As a fire chief, my responsibility is oversee the department as a whole, the budgeting, staffing, emergency operations. I oversee all that. I have deputy chiefs and division chiefs that oversee different aspects of that. But I have to oversee and make sure everything's working. Everybody reports back to me and tells me what's going on, and then dole out the responsibilities as need be. But all in all, if something goes right, it's good for me. If something goes wrong, it's my fault. So, just overall responsibility of the department.
Yeah, it all seems a little bit hectic for me.
But it can be.
Yeah. So what's the specific ranking system in the fire department? Like,
in our department in Greenfield, and they're all can be a little bit different. When you start out as a firefighter, probationary firefighter, for a period of a year, and then as you're on for a while, you may go up the ranks and test to become a lieutenant, which is a station officer, and then there's the rank of captain, which oversees a station, with station 1 or station 2. They oversee the day-to-day operation of that station. Then there's a battalion chief, which oversees the shift as a whole, which is both stations. From that point, you can go up to the rank of division chief, which we have 3 division chiefs, one that oversees EMS, which is emergency medical services, one that oversees training and safety, and one that is a fire marshal that goes out and does all inspections and investigations, fire investigations, building inspections for fire safety, and so on, public education. And after that is the deputy chief, which is second command underneath myself, and that person oversees those divisions, plus oversees the emergency operations department, make sure the apparatus is running properly, anything to do with emergency operations, that position oversees that. And then of course there's the chief.
When you were younger, did you think you were going to be a firefighter?
I always, as I mentioned before, I always had aspirations. I always loved the public safety, police and fire. I always loved both of them, but it wasn't. I made determination I wanted to go towards being a police officer, and when I went to college for law enforcement, I realized then I got on a volunteer fire department close to that college campus, and it was at that point that I decided, I'm going to college for the wrong thing here, and I changed my direction at that point and started actively looking for fire service then.
So, what do you think the most common misconception is about being a firefighter?
Most common misconception is they think firefighters just sit around and wait on a fire run to come along. Just sit in the chairs, watch TV, and there's nothing further from the truth for firefighters. They are constantly training and waiting for the next run. They go out and do inspections, do public education, clean things. In our department, it's typically that they are not. There's nothing. They don't have time to sit down till late in the evening, and and then of course you sleep in the firehouse. You're there 24 hours a day, so you go to bed there. But on our department in particular, they're up most of the night on runs, in and out on different runs, try to go back to sleep, and then they get caught on another run. So that's probably one of the common misconceptions of being a firefighter. You think it's easy and there's not much to it or whatever, but there's a lot that goes into it.
So like you said before of how they're constantly training and doing public, education, what type of training does being a firefighter require?
Well, it varies in different departments and the type of runs you make, of course, but within our department, they're constantly training. Every day is a training day. If you train for it, and then when you go out, it's just going to be like you're training. It comes natural to you. So they're always training on EMS operations, things we do, medical, fire. We do technical rescue, which is rope rescue, trench rescue, vehicle extrication, confined space. So they're always training on that. We have a hazardous material team, so they're training on hazardous material. Whatever the topic for the week is, the shift will typically train on that, and many shifts go above and beyond and train on other things too. That way they're very sharp when that emergency comes.
Okay, so from training the your firefighters to training the public, how important do you think it is for people to know CPR?
I think it's very important. That could be the matter between somebody's life and death. If you're a local restaurant and you see somebody go down, if you know CPR and you're able to perform CPR, that prolongs that person's chance of living. And when we come along, we have other measures we can take with medications. The paramedic can give medications and the heart monitor and such that'll help that along. But if we're able to keep the blood moving in a patient, or you are, as the citizens are, and that's better chances for that person to make it out alive.
Yeah. So, have you ever worked with the fire cadets?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So,
the Cadet Program is a tremendous asset to our department.
I'm sorry. What exactly do they do?
They do a lot of training, such as the same things we do, kind of on a smaller scale. They train for anything fire, anything EMS, to try to decide whether that's something they want to do for a career. And a lot of high school kids come in and decide they want to make that as a career, and some decide maybe they want to go a different direction. But they do that. They're able to ride out on emergency situations. They're not able to actually do things in what we call the hot zone, which is the main area where things are going on, but they're able to see what's going on and see if that's something they'd like to do for a career.
Okay, so what is the difference between a volunteer fireman and an actual fireman?
The one main difference is the career firefighter gets paid, the volunteer doesn't.
Okay.
They train the same, maybe not as much, because those people typically have another full-time job, but they do train for the job to make sure they're able to do it. They come in, they wear the same uniform. Anybody in the public wouldn't know a difference whether they were getting paid or not getting paid to do the job.
Okay. So do firemen work in shifts, or are they just like always on call?
Nope, they work a shift. They work a 24-hour shift.
24-hour
So
shift.
every third day there's an A, B, and a C shift. So the shift on today starts at 7 o'clock this morning. They'll go home at 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. So they'll work 24 hours, and then the next shift comes in. And then 3 days they'll come back again. So it's every third day for a 24-hour shift. And that shift, they're at station, like I said, they eat there, sleep there, do whatever, and hopefully sleep there. But that doesn't happen hardly at all anymore, the way the city's grown.
Okay. So what's the craziest call you, as a fire chief, have ever been on?
The craziest call. Well, you caught me a good one there. There's been many crazy ones. Just different accident scenes that you wonder how they actually happened. Somebody looks like they probably should have been killed in it, that actually just walking around. Many of those. But I could probably go on and on about different things that have happened over the years.
Yeah. So, following up the craziest call question, what about the most touching? What has really affected you the most?
Again, kind of going back on the negative side, but on the positive is it comes back with children. Whenever something good happens, when we can take care of a child and make sure a baby or a child is taken care of, and it comes out on the positive side. Those are the ones that are really touching, really makes everyone feel good. The guys at the firehouse, they do many things. They see somebody that needs help on the street, they'll go help them, and then that makes them feel good, which in turn makes the firefighters feel good.
Okay. And to close here, how can we get the community more involved with firefighting?
Probably the biggest thing is ask questions.
Questions.
Come ask questions, stop by, talk to us, and to see what we actually do. We're doing a Citizens Academy coming up. We're taking applications until Friday this week, so if anybody's interested in being a Citizens Academy, they can learn a lot about what we do, and that'd be a great help to us.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming in,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Roberts.
Boston joined alongside Colin Vanhorn. How you doing, Colin?
Doing good. How are you?
I'm doing well. So you've been out of high school for about 3 years now. How is life after high school?
It gets a lot more. It gets busier, man. I mean, well, with my life, I got a nephew that I raised, and between being a volunteer firefighter and my full-time job as a contract firefighter, I mean, it gets a little bit busy. Plus, you get a little bit older, paying bills, buying cars, stuff like that, and being an adult.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't regret it. It's
Yeah.
been fun.
So what fire station do you currently work at, and what's your role there?
All right. Right now, for the city of Greenfield, it depends on the day. I can be up at station 422 or 421, and for that, I mean, it's just the staffing. It's wherever we need bodies. If it's covering the big three, or well, the big four now, which is the tower, the rescue, the tanker, and the hazmat truck, or if you need me backstepping on an engine, wherever they need me to go, I go. But that's different with the career guys, where they have a dedicated shift and a dedicated station. Now, however, a guy's sick or he's got to take care of his kid, then yeah, he can flop to another shift or go to another house if he has to. But for me, as a volunteer, I just go as needed.
What is the hardest thing you've ever had to do as a firefighter?
Hardest thing I've ever had to do as a firefighter. With the job, it's very physically demanding, and I mean, I would say the hardest thing was the El Radio fire that was a few years back, because we started about 6 o'clock at night and didn't leave till about 3 o'clock in the morning. And then I had to come to school the next morning. Yeah, that was fun, man.
Oh, yeah.
We've had a couple nights like that.
So I've always wondered, what does a firefighter do when they're not on call?
When they're not on call, if, you know, as a career guy on station or me as a volunteer on station, we're usually doing some form of training, washing the trucks, keeping stuff clean. I mean, we live at that house for 24 hours.
Yeah.
Plus with our crews, I mean, between taking calls and, you know, we got to cook dinner. We live there for a whole 24 hours, and we just, we have some fun, you know. Like downtown, we have a pool table. We use it every now and then. And then up north, we got the projector. We may watch movies, stuff like that. But we have a good time.
What is the most challenging thing a firefighter can come across?
The most challenging thing is being in a situation where everything's going against you, and you're sitting there going, okay, now we got to make the problem better. I mean, we had a call 4 or 5 years ago where we had kids at a church camp. They were dropping in. It was hot. Well, there were 50 people there, and I mean, we're getting out of the trucks, and everybody's coming after us going, well, this person needs help, this person needs help, and you're sitting there going, holy cow, there's a lot of people here, but you're sitting there going, okay, take a breath, step back, okay. And I mean, I had 10 people swarm me as soon as I got out of the ambulance, and it's like, okay, we'll take a breath, and it's like, okay, is anybody hurt here? Well, no, okay. Direct me and where the people are hurt, because right now everybody talking to me, we're not doing any good. Yeah. So then from there, you know, we go and we take care of the situation, and we end up taking 4 or 5 people to the hospital over it, but it was part of the job. I mean, and especially with this day and age with terrorism and stuff like that being a problem, you're going to have bigger scenarios where you're going to have more people coming after you, and everybody's going to be freaked out, and you just have to take a step back, take a deep breath, and go, hey, this is what we're here to do. We're here to fix the problem. Yeah, it's bad, and it may be big and bad, but that's what we're here for.
Exactly. So on that note, what are requirements to be a firefighter?
For a firefighter, like as my position, you have to be what's called Firefighter 1 and 2, which is a 6 months class roughly, and it's just, you know, learning the skills, dragging hose, searches, etc. Out here, we require you to have an EMS certification, whether paramedic, EMT. With an EMT, it's another 6 months course, and I did both of those while I was in high school, but it's usually twice a week, and then maybe a weekend doing skills and stuff like that. And then from there, if you want to go further in the EMS role, you can go to medic school, which is 1.5 years. The only requirement with that is you have to be 21 because of certain medications that you can give. There are other certain levels in the EMS field that you can go into, but the primary ones for us is an EMT or a paramedic. From there, we have our specialty skills, especially out here. We do confined space, auto extrication, high angle, low angle rescue, hazmat. Those are just certifications that you get just, you know, being on the job, and when the classes come up, it basically is the best way to describe that.
So what's an average day at the firehouse?
An average day at the firehouse, we start at 0700, and basically from there, you know, guys are pulling the gear off, we're putting our gear on, making breakfast, getting roll call in, getting what we got to get done, whether we got training or classes or we got tours coming in, whatever we got to do that day. And then from there, I mean, when the runs come in, that's when we start going out the door. And then between everything else, it's, you know, if we have training, we get training in when we can, and we got tours coming in. If we got to go do building inspections, it just depends on what comes down from the top going, hey, this is what you got to do for the day. All right, and then the runs coming in.
So you talked about earlier about, you know, there's, you know, when you're not on call, you do some stuff. But what are some rules and regulations you have to follow when you're not on call?
The biggest thing with the rules and stuff like that and being off duty, you sit there, and a good friend of mine, a good mentor, a guy named Chief Rick Lasky, he's retired, but he says, you know, pride, honor, integrity are the biggest things for being a fireman. Well, when you're off duty or you're back at the firehouse, you got to remember, I mean, it's like right now, I'm wearing the badge, I'm wearing the uniform. You represent the city, you represent the department, and we're a good thing for the city and everybody around us. So we have to act professional. We have to be, you know, tip-top shape. And the biggest thing is, you know, you can't be jacking around. You can't be out partying and making a fool of yourself, because then you're making the department look bad, and then you're making people go, well, do we really trust the fire department? And we can't do that. I mean, we are supposed to be professionals in our job, which we are, but we have to be professionals off duty.
So you talked about a little earlier before the interview about a medical and a fire call. So what's an average medic fire call?
Okay, day to day, usually, I mean, we get a lot more EMS runs, which are anywhere from a sick person to chest pain. We can have cardiac arrest, difficulty breathing, and honestly, what you get coming across the radio may not be what you get when you get at the door at all.
Yeah.
But that's not dispatch's fault. That's not our fault. I mean, they can only go off what they hear. They don't know what's going on in the room. And then when we get there and we go, okay, this is not what we got called for, but you know what? We're here anyways. We're going to deal with it. And I mean, it honestly depends. You can't really give a mill of the run because, I mean, that's the best part about this job.
Yeah.
I come in every day and I don't know what I'm going to expect.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can be called to a house fire and it's food on the stove, or you can be called to a car wreck and it's a flat tire. It's happened.
Yeah.
But it is what it is, and it's part of the job, and it makes it fun.
You were in the cadet program. So how did the cadet program help you be a firefighter?
Out here, it helped me a lot because, I'd been around the fire service all my life, but, getting into the cadet program and being on station and taking calls and doing the trainings and stuff like that, it got me more prepared for, like, going to 1 and 2 and EMT and getting used to the day-to-day life on station. But the biggest part of it is making sure that you start understanding that pride, that honor, and the brotherhood of the fire service. And you start becoming part of the family the more you come around and being on station, knowing the guys and coming to training and all that. And you start understanding how big the department is as a part of your life. I mean, you become part of another family. And being a cadet helped me there, and it moved me up to the volunteer world, and hopefully here soon it'll put me into the full-time side on Greenfield. And you never know. I mean, it's all about how the process goes, but it's gotten me into a lot more open doors. And if you're a very quiet person, it will break you out of your shell. You learn how to deal with stress. It's a team building. I mean, you get a lot of characteristics and skills from this. And being a cadet and working your way up, a lot of guys get to know you, they get to trust you, and it is a big part if you want to become a fireman, I would say. If you're not sure about it, try this out. Because, I mean, there's been cadets that come in and they start taking calls and go, that's not really what I want. That's okay. We're not going to knock you. Not everybody can be a fireman, and that's not a bad thing. But, if you start getting into it and you love the job, then you can move up in the world and, have a lot of fun doing it.
What is some advice you would give someone who wants to be a firefighter?
Somebody that wants to be a firefighter, we talked about the cadet program. If you're in high school, I'd roll into that. If you're out of high school, I mean, come down, see what it's about. They did the Teen Academy out here. You could try that. But, get familiar with it. See if the department offers a ride-out program. If they do, come in, ride out, see if it's something that you like. And if you want to do it, start going to class. And then from there, start applying.
Definitely. I want to thank you, Colin, for coming in, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
I appreciate it.